you can't judge a book by its cover. But I believe the story of my mother, you can. And you will find how strong and dedicated of a person she was. I leave you with something that I wrote when I was in the 8th grade, just a few short months after she had passed. When my mother would go to her meetings and school outings, I would sit and wait for her to come home. Now I sit, continuing to wait for her to walk through the door once more. I know that it is something that I will not be able to wait for, but I'll sit no matter what. Waiting for those footsteps, or waiting for her to tuck me in and give me a goodnight kiss, only to be followed with the soothing sound of her voice as she would wake me up that very next morning. Honey face, it's time to wake up. For my mother is not only my mother, she is my best friend and my hero. Hello, my name is Joe Soccoa. My mother was Cesaria Soccoa. I am the youngest of 3 children that my mother Cesaria Soccoa had. I am 23 right now. She died when I was 13. My mother was born December 14th, 1955. Predominantly Italian household, like old school Italian. She grew up on 41st Street between Fort Hamilton and New Utrecht Avenue over there. It was all Italian in her house. There was no English whatsoever, from what I was told about her. Growing up, she would speak Italian in the household because that's what her parents spoke to her and her sister. She's the oldest of 2, my Aunt Teresa being the youngest.
Growing up with my sister was just the best, always, because we always looked for each other. She was a little older than me by 2.5 years. We were always together, doing things together, and our parents took us to many different functions and Radio City at Thanksgiving every year. And I remember vividly going shopping at Easter time for a new Easter coat and new hats and new little purses and gloves. So it was always great having an older sister. We shared a room, so we were really close, and we'd always have those little chats before we fell asleep. And I have so many good memories of my sister, and I really think about them all the time, and I miss her very, very much.
So one of the stories I remember of her as a kid, when she went to school, she was speaking Italian, and she went to Catholic school right down the block from her house, so it was really convenient, St. Catherine's. When she was talking in school, the nuns would hit her because they didn't believe that she only spoke Italian. They thought she was like mimicking them or something like that, or mocking them. And no, and then they told the nuns that no, she can't speak English. She comes from an Italian household, and they need to teach her English. She caught on pretty quick with the English.
So when we were growing up, when we got into our teen years, of course we'd always fight. My mother would always say, "You're like a cat and dogs, you're always fighting." But then we always looked to make up with each other, and we were always looking out for each other and looking for each other, because at the end of the day, we both had each other's backs, and that's what sisters did. We had little tiffs or fights or maybe even pulled each other's hair, but at the end of the day, we made up.
Like I said, her childhood, she spent most of it on 41st Street, where she knew a lot of people, and she met my father when she was like 8, because they lived right across the street from each other. So it was a pretty close-knit group from what, the stories I've heard.
Cesaria got engaged and came home to tell us that she was engaged to Louis. We were all a little surprised, happy but surprised. And I remember that night when we went to bed, I called over to her and I said, "Cesaria," I said, "are you sure about this? You really want to marry this guy?" And she goes, "Yes, I do." So it was an exciting time for our family. dress shopping and preparing. And it was actually a nice day for a December wedding. She got married in December. And I remember I cried the whole week she was on a honeymoon because I missed her. I missed her in the bed across from me. But it was a good time, and I think everybody had a nice time, especially Louis and Cesaria.
She worked at Chase Manhattan Bank in the city for a while, one of her first jobs. She worked for the Board of Ed then, really involved with the schools. PTA president at my elementary school. She worked at my junior high school, David A. Booty, when I was there.
It was pretty exciting time for our family when Cesaria started her family. Unfortunately, her first little boy didn't make it, but God was good, and he sent us Anthony, Nicholas, and then Joseph. She really loved all her children, and we just had the best time. Although she lost Michael and Louis, she had Anthony, Nicholas, and Joseph, who she loved deeply, very, very much, and who she was very proud of till the day she died.
She had kids. She had my brother Anthony. She had 2 miscarriages, and she lost 2 children. So in total, if you really count the 2 miscarriages and the 2 children she lost, she would have had 7 pregnancies. The 2 children that she lost were 2 boys. So if they were around, there'd be 5 boys altogether, but I don't know if I'd be here. Who knows?
The relationship with her kids was first and foremost the most important relationship in her life. She lived for them, always thought about giving to them, taking away from herself, doing everything. I mean, she ironed their outfits every night for every day that she had them in her life, so that they would go completely neat and clean and perfect. And I remember a time where Teresa herself and I were in the mall, and she needed a jacket, and Papa gave her money to get a new jacket, and she used that money to buy her kids jackets because she wanted them to have the ones that they wanted. So she took the money that her father gave her for her jackets and bought her children. Her children always came first, always.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. to more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be.
As far as her friends, man, she had loads of them. She had great friends, you know, they were really, every night, you'd hear in the kitchen, who is she on the phone with, what are they talking about, this, you know, what school's happening, what's happening at school, you know, who's doing this, and, you know, what soap opera did you watch? I mean, she was big on the soap operas, and you better believe some of her friends were big on it too, and that was a constant conversation every day.
About 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when every night she would call me and we'd talk about the soap operas that day, what happened, just everything and anything, and sometimes just not even nothing at all. We just knew each other inside out.
You could see the relationship she had with her friends, and there was a select few that was always around because that was the group.
It was great. We always did things together. We all played back in the day. Everybody played in everybody else's yard. Of course, Cesaria and my cousin Eleanor had to be the leaders all the time, and me, Teresa, and Donna just followed suit because that's what we did. But she was always very energetic, always happy, always just a good time.
You know, sitting out on the block on West First Street where, you know, we grew up and where we lived during the summer, everybody would be sitting outside. She'd take her folding chair right out after dinner, and after she cleaned up, would be right down the block sitting with all the friends while the kids played on the block. Everything was good, you know. Usually you get friends that kind of like argue with each other. I don't think they argued so much with my mother because it was whatever she said goes. And I don't think anybody can argue that.
Greatest times were when her, Teresa, and I went to get our nails done. We spoke about everything and nothing at all, but we looked forward to it. When you kids were small, and Teresa and I would come over like every night and have coffee and give you guys baths. That was like, it was the best. It was just so simple, just having coffee with her little 5 grains of sugar, and just being me, Teresa, and her 3 musketeers.
I'm sure if you ask her friends, though, there were times where she drove them crazy. And I believe it.
Ches was the sister I didn't have. I could say fuck you to her, and she still fucking called the next day. No matter what. And we fought. Oh my God. The only other person I could fight like that with is my husband. But she, oh my God.
I'm sure she drove a lot of people crazy. But the thing about it is, being around her friends who also worked with her in the schools, she had an unbelievable devotion to helping children in the schools.
Smart, loyal, very empathetic, giving, trusting. Every good thing that you can think of describes her. And not because she was my best friend, because it was the truth. She would literally give her last dollar to someone who needed it. She would cook her last meal for someone who needed it. She was the most giving person I ever knew in my life.
We weren't malicious with people or anything like that. We were very busy in our lives, being on a PTA and having kids.
Whatever she could do that benefited kids in the school, she did. Like I said, I mean, you could repeat it over and over again, but when I tell you she was involved in the schools, she was involved in the schools. I mean, PTA president for the longest I could remember at PS 177, working as a school administrator at David A. Booty for as long as I could remember, being on the school board of District 21, I think vice president or president, if I'm not mistaken, of that. So of the district, basically, like, she was at these big district meetings as a parent, but also as the president of the school council board or whatever, to see what they can do to help the kids in the classroom. And that's what she did. And she knew everybody. A lot of people called her the mayor. and I think it's pretty accurate. So it was, I want to say, late summer day. I'm not sure if it was the end of July, maybe August, when we were all outside. Ice cream man had just come. We're having our ice cream. We were all outside my house, too. Usually we used to sit down the block. And my mother got a phone call. I'm looking inside because you could see from my stoop to the inside of the house. And you could see her on the phone, and she sits down. And she's got this complete stunned look on her face. Now, I don't think anything of it because I'm 13 years old. What's going on inside? We walk inside, and she's hysterical crying. Now we're trying to figure out what's happening. And I go run outside to whatever adult was outside. I said, come inside, she's crying. So it happened to be the call that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And it really was you hit a brick wall for everybody.
I thought it was a fucking dream. Oh my God. We were there that night. We were all in front of the house that night. All of us sitting on a chair. Our usual night. And the fucking doctor called when he told her, what it was. We just was dumbfounded.
Well, when she got sick, it was just devastating. And it took us all by complete surprise because she was so adamant about going to the doctor all the time and being very conscious of her health. She didn't smoke, she didn't drink, she didn't overeat, she didn't overindulge in anything bad. So it was shocking and completely devastating. And to this day, 10 years later, I will never, ever get over it.
So when Cesaria was diagnosed with breast cancer, it was pretty shocking since she was very diligent about going to the doctor and making sure everything was okay because of our family history.
Again, I'm sitting there wondering what's going on. Now, I've heard the term, obviously, I know it was a disease, and people die from it. I was 13, I did have some sort of knowledge about it. And then, not to mention 2 years prior, losing my aunt to cancer. So she gets on the phone with my dad, who's away on a trip, and then he starts talking to all of us, and I'm sitting there, I'm upset because it's a natural reaction then. So she got diagnosed in, like I said, July, August, and it was a lot worse than what everybody made it seem. So, for me, a lot of information was held back, obviously, but it was a lot worse than what I initially thought. I found out years later that it was already stage 4 when she was diagnosed, which is the worst possible stage, and you kind of need a miracle to come back from that. So what happened was she had then gone to my aunt's house to stay because it was easy, it was accessible, and she was going to have somebody there taking care of her, my grandfather and my aunt.
We tried to do everything we could to get her the best care that she could have. And I was with her when she went to all her chemos and all her doctor appointments. And then in October, when she came home from the hospital, she actually came to stay with my dad and I. And we took care of her because we had a basement apartment, so she wasn't able to walk at the time. And I would go to work during the day. My dad was there with her. Then I'd come home and we'd have dinner and then, get her ready for bed or lay her clothes out for the next day.
So every day from school, I'd go over to my aunt's house to be with her till late at night. And it was the same routine over and over again. It was for me being a 13-year-old kid, it's like, oh yeah, I have all the energy in the world, but it kind of caught up to me. I was getting tired, and she was getting tired. We would sit there on Sundays, eat while she would lay in the bed, and she was getting worse to the fact where she was barely awake. So, everybody kind of knew what was going to happen, but I guess the problem for everybody was they kind of didn't know how to explain it to me. They kind of told me, I would say, a week before she died that, listen, she's going to be moved into a hospice, and that ultimately means that, they're going to take care of her until she goes. I don't know how, and I can't blame, people for, I don't know how you sit there and try to explain to a 13-year-old that, hey, your mom's going to die without it causing some sort of reaction that isn't good. So I think in that point in time is when, like, life really hit you in the face. And your maturity level just goes from 0 to 100 quickly. And, it was rough. And there's, like I said, it's so vividly clear. I could picture it right now of how everything went down. But there's one day I specifically remember, and it kind of gets me a little, like, choked up about it. After she was diagnosed, she always loved Dunkin' Donuts very much. So one morning after she was diagnosed, she woke me up. She's like, I want you to take a walk with me. Okay. It's like 6:30 in the morning. So we're walking to Dunkin' Donuts, and she's explaining this whole thing to me. And we're walking, and she says, listen to me. I promise you I'm going to fight this, and I'm going to win. I said, okay, Mom, I believe you and whatnot. And, she was telling me it's important for you to stay positive through it. I know it's going to be hard for you, so, do the best you can and stay positive. I said, yeah, that's fine. Again, it's hard to comprehend when you're 13, so it's like you're hearing this, and it's like, all right, yeah, I believe you, because I believed every word she said. Why would she steer me wrong? Then, you find out years later, which makes it even harder to deal with these days, that she knew she was going to die. And she gave specific instructions to my aunt and her best friend Madeline, and they tell me these things, like, she used to say while she was laying there, do me a favor, just, make sure Joseph is fed and has clean clothes. The other two I'm not worried about because they can take care of themselves. They're old enough. But just make sure he has clean clothes and fed, and make sure he goes to a good school. And I remember before she died, we were picking out schools for high school, and she wanted me to go to Madison High School because of the marching band. I kind of had to make a compromise there with her. I said, I'll go in the band because I played in the band from elementary school, junior high school, and I'll play it in high school, but I'm not going in the marching band. I'll play in the regular band. That was the compromise we had while we were sitting there picking through schools. But so those are like little things that you sit there and you kind of, yeah, you want to remember those things, but at the same time you don't want to remember those things because it just brings me to a bad place. And it just makes you think now at this point, like, when am I going to wake up from the nightmare? The day she died and the day she died, and afterwards, it was just the unbelievable amount of support that we had from everybody, the amount of people that came out. I'm very grateful that she touched the lives of so many people, and she helped so many people, and people that were part of it. I mean, the funeral procession line were cars deep. There was a police escort from the funeral parlor to the church, from the church to the cemetery. It was just phenomenal. And that's something also that I'll sit there and remember.
So when my sister passed, the outpouring of support from the hundreds of people that she knew and loved and helped and was involved in, she was very involved in her community and her church. It was unbelievable. I mean, there was like a line waiting to get into the funeral home, and that support was really carried out even the day of her funeral. So many people came. It was pouring rain. It was the day before Thanksgiving.
And it was a testimony to
And
the type of person that she was.
yeah, just like she was greatly loved by many people.
Oh my God. I've never, ever in my entire life ever experienced the amount of people that came to see her. It was like she was a fucking president. There was so many people, and I said, Ches, oh my God, how many people do you know?
We sent out over 3,000 thank you notes after the funeral. The line at the funeral parlor was out the door. That year, a couple months after she died, she was actually going to be the recipient for the 2004 Parent of the Year Awards. She was being honored as the Parent of the Year. And, you know, we accepted it. We were there to accept the award on her behalf. And to this day now, with the Bensonhurst West End community dinner that they do every year, that they honor people throughout the schools, the Parent of the Year Award is now named after her. So it's the Cesaria Soccoa Parent of the Year Award, and that's something that makes me extremely proud of because, you know, that's how important she was in the schools, and that's how much she touched the lives of people in the schools. Then a few months after that, I remember it specifically because I was trying out for my high school's baseball team, and I had to do my tryouts earlier because we were having a street naming ceremony, and the block that she lived on, West First and Kings Highway, the street was named after her, and it was Cesaria Soccoa Way. And even then, when the street ceremony happened, the amount of people that were there for this street ceremony, I mean, it's just unbelievable. So the way I look at it now is I'm an extremely proud son of a wonderful woman who touched the lives of everybody and had such an impact on everybody.
Growing up, Aunt Ches did so many things to make me feel special. Every birthday, she would buy me a numbered doll figurine. She did this till I was 16 years old, and I still have them all. Each holiday, no matter if it was something as tiny as Halloween or Valentine's Day, my aunt would send me a card in the mail. I remember getting so excited to be getting my very own mail delivered to me. But my most fond and vivid memory of my godmother is her voice when she would tell me, "You'll always be my little girl."
So I think between me and my brothers, we each had a different relationship with my mother. It's difficult for me to sit here and say what the relationships were because, you know, we were all different ages when she died. You know, my middle brother Nick is 7 years older than I am, and my oldest brother Anthony is 10 years older than I am. They took it just as hard as you'd ever think, you know, just because I took it one way, that doesn't mean they took it the same way. Them being older kind of had more of an understanding about it. It might not be like the greatest thing in the world to, or the greatest example in the world to use it, but they kind of had more time with her. So I'm sure the memories with her are a little bit longer lasting than I had with her. But obviously there's nothing you can do with that. You know, but I think for the way it hit us, I think it equally hit us hard. You know, that's our mother and stuff like that. Just dealt with it different ways. I really can't, I really can't sit here and explain how they dealt with it. It's just different for all of us. People deal with things in different ways. For me, it was more of shock because I didn't know what to do in that moment. I didn't know what I'm supposed to do in that moment. I think there was maybe 2 times I cried. One happened to be that day when I went to church, and they said it in church. And I think the other was then the first time we walked into the funeral parlor to see her in the casket. And I think I still don't know how to deal with it, to be honest with you. I'm still learning how to deal with it. If you ask anybody about the relationship that my mother and I had with each other, I think you'll probably hear pretty consistent stories and pretty consistent answers. We were close. You know, me being the baby of the family, it's usually like that in a mother-son relationship. But I mean, we were close. A lot of people referred to me as her tail because I'd go everywhere she went. I'd cry if she left the house. You know, so we had a really special relationship. That's why it was even harder as the years went on. You know, you keep trying to think about her and stuff like that. You know, there are days where, like I mentioned, every day from when she was diagnosed to when she died, I remember clearly. And there are certain memories that you kind of don't want to, you don't want to have in your head. And these flashbacks, hit me every once in a while, and it kind of messes my day up a little bit. Because then I'm thinking, like, why did this happen? Why did it happen to me? It's really unfair. But you kind of learn as you go that obviously life isn't going to be fair, and, every year that she's not here, it becomes harder and harder as I get older. There were a lot of things that I wasn't able to share with her, like, she died when I was in the 8th grade, so, she wasn't there for junior high school graduation. She wasn't there for my high school graduation and my confirmation. Then I went on to college. She wasn't there for my college graduation. And now where I am now, publishing a book, working in the Board of Ed where she worked. And I know there's a lot of people that'll sit there and tell you, well, she's with you, and I get that. But if you ask anybody, comparing if you want them there spiritually or physically, obviously the answer is going to be physically. You want them there physically. We were really close, though. And I think if you really ask everybody, like I mentioned, the bond between us was unbreakable. And the day she died, everything came crashing down.
Well, you asked me the question if I could talk to her now. I don't have to think about that because I do talk to her every single day. And I do speak to her every day. And I know she's with me every single day through good and bad times.
All as I remember was Chez telling me that we're going to hit our 50th together. Don't worry, Chez. We'll hit our 50th together. We'll be 50 together because I was in August and she was in December. And I was older than her, so I hit 50 before she did. Oh, God. And now I'm hitting 60. 10 years. 10 years.
I want to thank everybody for being a part of this tribute video. I want to thank David Halter for putting it together for me. And I just want to thank everybody for the tremendous amount of support that I've had over the years. And just look at it as, we're remembering a great person. We're not sad about somebody that is no longer with us, which it is sad, but just remember the person that she was and the lives that she touched, and just keep her in your heart. And that's what I do every day. She's right there with me.
Ooh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that
Love you, Mom. I miss you.
once in
It's so hard without you. Can't wait.
Hey Ma, I miss you, I love you, you're the greatest mother in the world that nobody can replace. I miss you every day. I wish I can hear your voice one more time.
Oh wow, I can't believe it's 10 years. Unbelievable, Cesaria. 10 years, amazing. You don't know how much we miss you? And it's still not right that you're gone. We'll always love you.